I think it's live on me. Hello, world, if that's the case.
Okay. We're good to start the whole thing? Okay. What's going on, everybody? We are live and we have a fantastic guest today. If you're like me, you love birds, nature, and outstanding photography and video, and that's exactly what our guest brings today. Mark Smith Photography is one of my favorite Instagram accounts. I love his stuff. It is absolutely amazing, and hopefully today we're going to find out how he gets some of these incredible images that he so kindly puts on Instagram for us all to look at. It's really amazing. So if you're a fan of Mark Smith, go check out his Instagram right now. You can drop in any kind of questions that you might have, and we try to get to those if we have anybody show up for the live. And if you are a fan of the podcast and you are looking for the long form podcast on YouTube, that has changed. So I want to make sure everybody is aware of the change. We have moved all the long form to Tom Rowland Podcast full length. There'll be a link in the description below where you can get to that YouTube page. It's brand new. We're starting from scratch because the shorts seem to have messed up everything that we had going on, even though the shorts are doing very well right now. It kind of messed up the long form. So now we are starting from scratch. So if you like the podcast, head over there and subscribe to it, and you will be able to see awesome guests like we have right now. I think there's 365 episodes over there, and then the How To Tuesday lives somewhere else. Anyway, right now we're going to bring in Mark Smith. Mark, how are you?
I'm great. Thank you. Thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
Absolutely, man. I'm really a big fan of your work. It's so crystal clear, and you just have I don't know how you put yourself in the situations to get what you get, but it's really amazing. How long have you been doing professional photography?
So, like the professional label would have come into play around 2017.
Okay. And so
Yeah.
what were you doing before that?
Oh, I've done all kinds of stuff. I was before that, I did a lot of writing, ghost writing. I've written a few books that I was lucky enough to actually become bestsellers of
Really?
which is kind of, yeah. I was a musician for a while in a band too, for quite a bit. Um, I'm a very creative individual, so
You would
I'm
play
always creating something. So.
So would we know any of the bands?
Oh no, I highly doubt it.
How about any of the books?
Probably not. Because they're just kind of weird subjects. Like the bestsellers of were on, of all things, like treasure hunting and stuff along the coast here, and
Really?
I was actually quite surprised at how well that was received and how it kind of took off and like
Well, treasure
created
hunting
its own.
is a popular subject. I mean, I spent a lot of time in Key West, and of course, Mel Fisher, and the Atoll show was down there, and I think that inspired a lot of people to kind of wonder if they could find treasure themselves.
Mhm.
In your writing, did you? I'm sure you covered Mel Fisher and what he had, what what happened with his treasure, and
Oh yeah, oh definitely. Yeah, I wrote several books on the subject. They were self-published, and one was enough successful enough to make me want to really, what I would say, try and kind of do kind of like a treasure hunting or metal detecting Bible, so to speak. And that one was the one that kind of took off and went mad. And at the time, I didn't, I didn't understand why it was so popular. But now that I can go back in time and look, and when I published it that year, there were a bunch of reality shows on cable television for treasure hunting, and everybody wanted to figure it out, and they went to Amazon, and Amazon. I was lucky enough; Amazon just kind of served them up all of my content, and
wow.
yeah, it's actually kind of one of the stepping stones to me doing photography because it did a couple of things. One, it gave me the freedom to be financially stable and focus full time on photography and not really have to worry about making any money on it. So I
Hmm.
could do it as a passion and really learn it. But it also gave me the confidence that my voice was something that people connected with, and my storytelling ability was something they connected with, and that kind of helped me do my YouTube channel, which is how this all kind of started and went just on its, snowballed from that point on. So.
Yeah, that's awesome, man. I read a book called Ship of Gold in the Deep Blue Sea. Are you familiar with that one? It was off in North
No.
Carolina, and
Mm.
ship was really, really deep. Everyone thought it was going to be very shallow, but the people that found it really, really deep. It was a fascinating book, though.
Oh, yeah.
I think I like the treasure hunting because typically it brings in a lot of the history and why it would be there and why it was found there and what would have happened to leave it there, like the Etosha and all that. It's
Sure.
fascinating, all that story.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
I did a lot of that too, like across the entire country. I traveled at one point in an RV, and we did that as we went around, and it was actually a really cool way to teach my son history, because I could, like, history from a book isn't always interesting to kids, but
right,
if you could go dig up some relic and then have them kind of reverse look up what that relic was, why it was there, and all that kind of stuff, it made them a lot more interested in history. So it was a cool experience for sure.
how many kids do you have?
Two, I have a 26-year-old son and a 19-year-old daughter.
Wow. And
Yeah.
so when you were doing that in the RV, did you take both your kids or just your son or both?
Both. Yeah, my late wife had the idea to do this, and she came to me one day and said, "Let's sell everything we own, get an RV, and just go." And I told her she was crazy, but okay, let's do it. And we did, and it was easily one of the best experiences I've had in my life. We did it for about 9 months total, and when we got into Western Colorado, we fell in love with the San Juan Mountains and stayed there for about 3 years. And yeah, and that's where the photography really started, I would say, over there. Even though I had all of my knowledge of Florida, because I'm a native Floridian, and I've spent most of my time outdoors around all of these animals and fishing. So I kind of understood them on a different level, I think, than most people. Um, so when we left Colorado and came back to Florida, I had kind of a fresh set of eyes for photography, but I had all of this knowledge on all of the local wildlife, and the two paired up really well together.
Man, yeah. So when you left for the RV trip, did you have uh was there a route that you were going to do? Like head to Alaska or like what was the plan leaving? Or just you go and see what happens?
Yeah, just go. There was no plan but to go west and see where it went. Like the initial idea was we were gonna go along the Gulf Coast and go all the way around through Louisiana, Mississippi, down into Texas, and that's what we did. And when we got into Texas, we literally shot straight up and went up through, Texas and New Mexico, and ended up in Colorado. But the cool thing about Colorado was when we made it a home base, it was close enough for us to venture out to other places like Washington State or Oregon, or like Wyoming and the Tetons. Like you could do that in a day drive. So it was kind of a cool home base to experience more of the West.
Nice. That's where I started my guide career was in the Tetons, Jackson, Wyoming.
Yeah,
Beautiful
beautiful
place there.
place. Yeah.
You're not gonna miss on photography there.
No.
Unbelievable. I
Yeah,
mean, it's like a paradise for
yeah, yeah.
photography, painting, or anything. So you say that kind of was the motivation to get into photography. So you weren't into photography when you were before you hit Colorado?
I was. I have taken photos my whole life, but I think the passion really started then because of all of the new kind of stimulus that I was getting. The new animals, the new birds, the new people, places, foods, and then all of the backdrop stuff was like so overwhelming, stimulating. I wanted to capture it all because it was all new to me. I was like, it's like a little kid in a candy store running around out there experiencing all this stuff. And it really set me on fire, I would say, and pushed me to really try to understand everything about photography on a technical level. And I've told this story a few times, but I have a very vivid moment when kind of the technical aspects all made sense to me and clicked. And I was in a high mountain valley in Western Colorado called Yankee Boy Basin. It's almost 11,000 feet up. So I think if I remember right, there's like a third less oxygen. I could be quoting that wrong, but there's definitely a hit on your oxygen intake when you're up that high. But the place is beautiful. Like there's like wildflowers. This is in the summer. Wildflowers like up to your waist of every color. There's all kinds of little hummingbirds and pikas and snow-capped peaks in the background, brooks, and all this stuff. It's just overwhelmingly beautiful. And I was sitting up there photographing hummingbirds one day, and it kind of just all made sense to me. The relation of what the three main settings on your camera would be. And I joke about it and say I don't know if it was the lack of oxygen to my brain that kind of put me in this place, or the overwhelming beauty, or a combination of both. But it was literally like somebody just came down with boop and put all that info on my brain and went, oh, I get it now. And then it was just kind of a fine tuning granularly from that point on, based on whatever it was I was shooting and the light that was given to me at the moment.
Wow. So the three main settings, can you tell us about that? Like what
Yeah, yeah. So
your understanding of that?
yeah, yeah. So there's actually a teaching method people use called the exposure triangle, and I personally think it's flawed, but I'll say why in just a minute. But the three settings would form a triangle, and it would be your shutter speed, and then the aperture of the camera and the lens, and then your ISO. So those three things change the amount of light coming into your camera, and they all have certain side effects based on how you choose to do them. So you basically have a certain amount of light coming in, and you have to kind of divvy it up to these three places and understand what changing them will do to the final image, and if it's what you want. So understanding how those three work together is very important. But again, like this exposure triangle that is very popular and taught would put each one of these at a point. Like your ISO would be the top, and then your aperture would be maybe the far left, and then your shutter would be the far right. And I think it could be any way around. But the real missing piece would be, it should be an exposure pyramid with a point on the top. And the point on the top would be you as the photographer, because you would influence how all of these things change, and your distance between you and your subject would also uh, regulate how you could make all of these changes. So there's like a missing piece in this teaching platform that everybody's taught, that needs to be interpreted in a different way. And that missing piece is you, the photographer, because
Hmm.
you, again, like the distance between you and your subject will can help influence these settings if you're constrained on light.
Right.
So,
I like that because it brings a human element to it. And when
yeah.
that was one of my questions that I was going to ask you is like, where are we going with cameras and the auto settings and just being able to like is cameras keep getting better and better.
Yeah.
They're quickly, even your phone camera is so quickly able to do a way better job than we used to be able to do. I don't know.
Mhm.
Very, very quickly, it can take a pretty nice picture.
Sure.
So as that continues to get better and better and better, where does the human element sit in that? Like when you just described that, it sounds like
Mhm.
when you put yourself at the top of that pyramid, that
Yep.
you're thinking there will always be a human element of this in your photography, I guess. But what about just a regular person that picks up a phone or a really nice camera is and it becomes more and more, automatic with their
I think that really depends on the individual, and how they see the world around them. Photography is a great tool for teaching you to see things in a very different way. As you start to take photos, you really start to understand light and shadow and reflections and all of these other things that you normally just shut off. Like you don't pay any attention to them as you go about your day. So I think it really depends on the person. I'm a big advocate of using your phone. I use my phone constantly to take photos, and again, the phone is great at taking photos, but as a human, you still have to try to capture this window or this story, or this emotional moment in a way that is compelling. So you still have like your job to do as a photographer, even though the equipment has gotten better and easier. I think what it does is it actually brings the hobby, if you want to call it, of photography into more people, and
sure.
gives people more confidence to take better photos.
Mhm. And when it comes to a phone, like, how are you using the phone? Um, I mean, is that what some of what we're seeing on Instagram is coming from a phone? I don't know. It looks amazing.
Some of it is, but not the majority is not. Like as a photographer, I know immediately the difference in the two, but the old saying is the best camera is the one you have in your hand, and sometimes that's your phone.
Yeah.
And knowing how to use your phone, you can still capture some amazing stuff. I just got back from a trip to Thailand. I was there for a couple of weeks, and I was on some of the more exotic islands out there, the PP island chains, and there are a lot of cats there that they would call community cats. They're not feral, they're not stray, but they kind of roam the streets freely as they want to. Yeah, that's one of the guys right there.
Hmm,
If you
that's so
see
cool.
that, yeah, and that was all with my iPhone, all of those photos. But that was in the moment. I didn't have my camera there, so all I had was my phone. So I made the best I could out of taking photos of that cat. That
I,
would not be the phone. That's
yeah.
that's different.
I saw
You can.
another video. If you scroll down a little bit, Jake, there was one of it might have been that cat or another one that was after a crab
Oh,
on
the
the
ghost
beach.
crab. Yeah.
This is incredible. I mean, just the way, like the way that you use the light here, and I don't
Yes.
know if you were positioned in the right place or if you moved or if it was just perfect or you're using the settings on your phone. But this video is, I mean, not your phone, on your real camera, but I mean, it's just so cool. Like,
Yeah. That all was a surprise. I was photographing this cat on the beach, and it's a younger cat, and I was having a good time photographing it, and then it just started digging and dug up this ghost crab and kind of started playing with it. I was very surprised to see it dig as far down as it did, and try to get this crab and to play with it. And I was just in the right place at the right time to capture this moment. And interestingly enough, it's a very polarizing video. There's a lot of people who do not like it because I sat back and let the cat, in their words, torture this crab. So there's a lot of people that have given me a lot of hate for this moment, and especially how I framed it, because I found humor in it, that the cat dug up a crab and started playing with it. So um, it's a weird thing sometimes.
seems like a
It,
natural
it,
occurrence. It's not like,
yeah, that's the thing. That's one of the hardest things to do as a wildlife photographer, and a lot of people don't agree with this, but is you're there to document this and not interfere with nature and in the way that things are playing out. I have another video where this was another a very polarizing thing, where I was filming a sea turtle on the coast of Florida that had hatched, and it was making its way. There it is. Yeah, it was making its way down to the beach, and ironically, the same kind of crab just shows up and lifts this turtle up and runs away with it. And this blew my mind that this was happening. And I've experienced this before with the turtles and the crabs, and there's a lot of birds that prey on them too. And you can't keep up if you want to try to prevent this from happening. It's sad to see, and it's hard to watch, but it's part of the process. And to be fair, the crab deserves to eat too. So you can't get in the way and interfere with that stuff. But a lot of people will
I mean,
condemn you for not
that's a
doing so.
real, yeah, that's a real, question for like, I guess it's an ethics question. Is like, is is it better to interfere in something like that? But
Yeah.
is interfering, that's the wrong place too. So you're going to have some people that understand the wild world, like
Mhm.
fishermen, hunters, and people that are outside a lot. They understand that's a natural part of the world. That crab eats turtles. This isn't the first time that crab's eaten a turtle.
That's right.
So you're just documenting it. You're not stepping in. You're not doing anything. You're just there, and you happen to be in the right place to get that shot.
Yeah.
Well, are you supposed to intervene? Because that's not right either. I mean, that's what our
That's
national
right.
parks are. Our national parks are an area where you're not supposed to intervene. It's supposed
Hmm.
to happen in its natural way. And if you photograph that, well, that's nature. It's like a wolf taking down an elk or an elk
That's
calf.
right. That's right.
Okay,
Yeah.
that's natural.
That's right. Yeah. And I've been to Africa a few times recently, and that plays really hard when you're in Africa. Watching a lion take down a warthog or a buffalo. It's not easy to watch in any way, shape, or form. But you can't interfere. This is the way that this stuff works. And as much as you don't like the idea of this animal dying, the lion has to eat too, and it has cubs to feed as well. So it's all part of the big circle, part of the
Well,
process.
there's also beauty in a predator. like a predator is good at what they are doing. They're good at it. And there's beauty
Yes,
in that. There's beauty in watching an animal that is a cheetah chase down something in super slow motion. That's awesome to see that. I mean,
it
yeah,
is.
it kills something, but it has to kill something every day.
That's right.
Yeah.
Yeah, it can't go to, a fast food place and get food. It's gotta work hard to
How do
get its
you
meal and survive.
you have a massive social media following. How has how do you deal with that negativity? I mean, you're going to get it one way or another. You're going to get
Yeah,
it if you intervene, you're going to get it if you don't intervene. So
that's right.
and you're creating this thing that is so beautiful, and your work is so good that it's going to draw a lot of eyeballs, and it is
Yeah,
going to be split 50-50, 70-30. I don't know. There's going to be a split.
yeah, for
Um,
sure.
how do you deal with things that seem negative to you, or attacks, or what do you do?
Um, I try to look at them, like, step outside of it from myself and try to look at, both points of view, and I'm usually pretty good at doing that and understanding, both sides, and then I will try to just kinda make my decision on what I think is right, and then that's kinda where I just stay, and if they wanna argue, they can argue, but, I typically don't, continue at that point. Like the cats, the cats were a good example. I was taking a lot of photos of those cats, and there were some people that were attacking me for it, calling me unethical. And I thought about this for a little while. These cats. Ultimately, this was the decision I came to. These cats did not ask to be there. So I should not demonize them for their existence, and I didn't think it was right. I thought, if anything, you should be able to show their character and their perseverance, and inspire people to maybe want to do something about it. And that was the stance I took. And at that point, I quit talking to people that were negative about it and just didn't even pay attention to them. So.
Hmm. How about your social media following? Did you start some of the other photographers that I know and I'm friends with were resistant to get on Instagram at first to share their work, and then once they did, it was a positive experience for them, I think. What was your journey to this large following that you have? How did you decide that you were going to start an Instagram, and what's the journey been to grow to where you are today?
So I started actually with YouTube, at the advice of my son, who at the time I think was 16 or so, maybe 17. And I would go out here in Florida and I would film a lot of birds doing what they do. And I would come home and I would show it all to him and my late wife and my daughter. And my son would say, this is absolutely amazing, Dad. You need to make a YouTube video about this. And at the time, I didn't really think anybody would be interested, but I made a video. It was mildly successful. It's kind of like the same process I took with writing the books. And because it was mildly successful, I thought, what if I actually put some time and effort into this and try to make it a good thing where I kind of can bring these people along the way with me and introduce them to all of this wildlife that they've probably never experienced before. And it kind of grew from there. And I had some epiphany moments during all of this where I realized that was like the key for me. There's a lot of people who don't get to experience this stuff, and when you get to experience it every day, like I do, like with a lot of the wildlife, it's hard to understand that there's 90% of people out there don't. And like one of the big aha moments I had for that was when I was in Colorado. There was a young girl that was working in the deli, and I realized I put her at maybe 20. I realized she's probably never left this little town. And I asked her one day when she was like giving me my stuff, have you ever seen a pelican before? And her response was, "What's a pelican?" And I was like, "Oh wow, this is okay. I get it. Like, I can take people along this journey." So YouTube took off, and then everything else became secondary. Um, and now I think Instagram has overtaken YouTube by quite a bit. Um, just I guess the way that it was. But it took a long time. It wasn't an instant thing. Let's see, let me think. So I started YouTube in 2017, and I think it took me 5 years to get to 100,000 subscribers on YouTube. And I was doing Instagram at the same time, and Instagram was slowly growing. And then once I hit 100,000 subscribers on YouTube, within a year, it was up to 1.7 million. So it just kind of snowballed. And then Instagram was the same way. Instagram was a little bit behind YouTube at the time, and then it kind of snowballed as well, and did its own thing. And so many people will ask me, what is the key to being successful on social media? And to be honest, I think a lot of it is a crapshoot. Like there's a lot of people that have amazing content, and it doesn't get the eyes on it that it deserves, and they don't get the recognition they deserve. So I'm not entirely sure, but I do know that I subscribe to what a famous music producer, Rick Rubin, says, and that is, if you produce whatever form of art it is you're producing in its purest form for yourself first, then it will be the purest and best that you can do, and everybody else will kind of fall in place after that. And that's, for me, that's what I've always done. I've always tried to capture these moments that amaze me and teach me something, and then pass that on to others. And that seems to be working pretty well. So
That's awesome. Did you read his book? I'm sure you probably did.
yeah,
I
yeah, I
love
have.
the book. I really liked it. I thought,
Yeah, it's different.
yeah, it's different, and but I think he's really an amazing guy. How he has spanned so many different genres of music, and basically what he says in podcasts and in that book, I guess, of all the different things that I've listened to him talk, is that he's really just, it's not about the music. It's about him getting the artist to feel comfortable and getting the artist to give the best of themselves
That's
in
right. Yeah,
whatever aspect of music it is. And then he's
yeah,
pulling something out of them that no one else was able to do.
that's right.
And that's what's successful. And that's
Yeah,
what's so interesting in this world that we're living in, of AI and so many different directions that we could possibly go, is like Rick Rubin is like, no, it's a human thing. He's
yeah.
getting something from this person that's not going
Hmm.
to come from a computer. It's not going to
Yeah,
come from something else. It's within that person. And another person needs to somehow inspire or motivate or make that person feel comfortable enough to let that out to the world. And
that's right.
I don't know, I really like him, and I really like that book. And
I did too, and I think you're right that he's kind of proven himself, because he's done this through many genres of music, not just one. So
so
like, yeah, he's hit on a key element that is crucial, I think, to the success of art, and that's it. And I think my favorite was the story he told about the Chili Peppers, when the singer came down and was reading their song Under the Bridge to him, and he said, "What is that? That's amazing." And the singer's like, "Oh, that's not a Chili Pepper song." He's like, "What are you talking about? No, you guys got to make this." And that was kind of the catapult for that band. He
right,
exactly what you said. He got them comfortable enough to share that side, and it changed everything.
right. And so did you feel like that before you read that from Rick Rubin, or did was that just like more justification for how you were already feeling, or like what was
I
your
think more justification, and more confidence that I was on the right path.
Mhm.
So,
Yeah, interesting. So the YouTube and the Instagram are interesting, because you said before, like, people ask you about being successful on social media. I would ask you, what's your definition of being successful on social media? Like, what is
ooh.
success on social media?
Mm. Well, for most people, that's defined by a number next to your
Right.
name.
Well,
I
that
don't
or
know that.
money, right? Like some
Yeah,
platforms pay, but then some you get a lot of views and you don't get paid. Um,
yeah. This is
but
this is true.
your personal definition of success on social media would be interesting.
So, I would say my personal definition of success as a whole, uh, social media or not, is freedom, and the freedom to do what you want when you want. I think that's, for me, that's key, and that's something that I've fought very hard for many years. And that's what I think I cherish most out of all of this, is the freedom to do what I do when I do it when I want to do it. And that's very powerful.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that's the most powerful. So if a young creative person, not necessarily a photographer, not necessarily a musician, a creative person looks to you for inspiration and asks you, how do I achieve that freedom? What do you say to them?
Ooh, I think again, it's kind of the old cliche: work very, very hard at your passion, and don't let anybody tell you otherwise. And you're gonna go through, like, for lack of a better term, you're gonna go through a bunch of bullshit to get there. You have to. That's just part of the process of life. And all of those little things that might be holding you back are actually valuable lessons that you can glean little bits from to help you later. So
Hmm. That's
definitely.
interesting. That's interesting. And then, I had this one guy on, and I remember he actually had a YouTube page, and he also was talking about how much he valued freedom and how much um, but he went a different direction with it. And this guy's name was Rick Moore. He has a YouTube page. It's all about sailing. Um,
Mm,
Sailing Sophisticated Lady is what his very popular YouTube page, and he goes all over the world. But
yeah.
his he went straight to no debt. Like
Mm,
the first thing, like you could have all of these things about you know um, working hard and working through all of the negativity and people not appreciating what you're doing, and you can work through all of that, but you're never even going to get there if you're saddled with debt and you don't even have the freedom to experiment, to have any white space to say, you just got to work two jobs all the time because
hmm
you weren't disciplined with your spending, or something happened and you're now saddled with debt. So now there's no white space to
hmm
think, no white space to create, no white space to experiment, no white space to dream, right? Because you're saddled. And that was, I thought that was pretty interesting, especially coming from him who had um, kind of moved in that direction, and now he's going the ultimate of freedom, being on this the
Sailboat.
sailing boat that is
Yeah.
perfect, that is totally self-sufficient, like
Yeah.
water maker, solar, it's powered by the wind, and he's going to try to do a whole um circumnavigation kind of thing. But I hadn't thought about him in years. That's
Yeah.
interesting. It was a similar kind of thing of freedom. So
Yeah. Yeah.
when you're able to do anything that you want to do, you're able to go and shoot what you want when you want. How much of that is travel time? And it sounds like you've been to Thailand recently. You've been, where else did you say? Africa a couple times
Yeah.
recently.
hmm
So what's on your list, and how much, if you were to blue sky it with your family and everything, how much
mm
would you travel compared to where you're traveling now?
Ooh. Uh, I travel quite a bit now. Um, Whew, I think it would be a permanent thing.
Yeah.
24/7. Yeah. I, uh, having the experience of traveling in the RV was fantastic for a couple of reasons. One, the freedom you get from shedding all of your belongings is another one of those things that many people aren't aware of. Like, when you have a lot of stuff, a lot of that stuff can kind of be stressful. And when we got rid of everything, um, I couldn't believe how freeing that was. I was like, wow, this is actually, I feel a whole weight off of my shoulders, and like I just feel like I can just go do whatever I want. Like, and that's what we did. But it also taught me the importance of travel and how it can expand your mind and yourself. Meeting different people. Even, I mean, uh, just traveling across the United States, it's a big place, and from state to state, that, like, from being in Wyoming, people are different, cultures are different, foods are different, everything is different. And I think that's one of the best things you can do for yourself as a human being, is to experience all of these things and understand more about us as humans. And it's funny because I go to all these places to photograph animals, but at the heart of it, every single time, there is a human element or a human story that is the most memorable every single time, without question. and it's very powerful, and it's also a good way to develop a network of friends all over the world, which is also fascinating. So yeah.
It is. It so do you have some places that when you decide where you want to go, are you deciding that you want to go there because it's an interesting place, or are you deciding that you want to go there because they have an interesting animal that you want to photograph that you may not have photographed yet? Or is it maybe both? I don't know.
Both. Yeah, it's a combination of both. When I went to Thailand, I just wanted to see Thailand. I didn't necessarily want to do a lot of photography, but the itch to create got me with the, like I said, the community cats there. And I ended up doing my thing with the cats, and then I met a lot of great people there too, who who knew me and helped guide me around in some places. And they knew me from social media, and they took me to some amazing places to photograph some birds. And that's also a really cool thing, is to see the pride people have in their locations and their homes and wanting to share their lives and everything with you. That's it's fascinating. Um, so that was an interesting thing as well. And I just got back, I think 3 or 4 days ago from Greece, but that was a trip solely to photograph these Dalmatian pelicans, the largest pelicans in the world.
Those are
And that
wild
was, oh,
pelicans.
they're it's unbelievable.
So how big
And
are
to
those? I couldn't get I've never seen one of those in person. I've
Yeah.
never been to Greece, but how big are those compared to our pelicans in Florida?
Oh, the brown pelicans. I think a brown pelican could probably fit inside the Dalmatian pelican's pouch.
I was wondering that it looked like a very large bird from Instagram, but I don't have anything to. There's no scale, to determine
Yeah,
is it bigger than ours or what. But our white pelicans are big, but that shot right there, that just looks to me like a large bird, a really big
it's
one.
it's massive. They can be up to 30 pounds and a 12-foot wingspan.
God,
So yes, it's a big bird, definitely huge, and it's a cool place. I need to educate myself a little bit more on the birds there. But they're there in the winter in breeding colors, and which you can see here, their pouches get all lit up, and they get the fancy feathers, to compete for mates and stuff.
so how did you
Brilliant
decide
animals, though.
that's a bird that you wanted to travel for?
It's irresistible.
Yeah,
I
I
mean,
mean,
look at that thing.
it's so cool looking.
Yeah, yeah. I knew the moment I saw those birds that I wanted to go photograph one, so it was a no-brainer to me. And the guy that I took, or that I hired to take me out, he even said, some people questioned, "Are you coming all the way here to photograph the pelicans?" And I was like, "Absolutely."
Was that a surprise to him?
I don't think so. I think he understood.
So
But again, go
uh,
ahead.
when you travel, do you travel alone, or do
No,
you family with you?
yeah, I usually travel with other people.
And like other photographers or like friends?
Sometimes a little of both.
Uh-huh. That's
Yeah.
cool. Do your kids like to travel with you?
My son will go with me a lot of the times. A lot of the things that we go for travel is we teach a lot of people photography, and
Oh,
he's a good backup to come with me.
yeah. And so he's a photographer himself?
Yeah, yeah, no, it's not his passion, but he understands it, and he understands all of the animals and stuff.
That's cool. Does he have the travel bug?
Yes.
My son
Yeah.
got that too, and he graduated from Montana State, and he went around the world. He went and spent a couple months living in a van in New Zealand, and then he hit Fiji, Vietnam, Singapore, Japan. I don't know. I'm forgetting a couple other places, I think, but that's what he wanted to do, and did it on no money, and
Mhm.
just saw so many different places, and his perspective is quite different when he comes back. Like it's a great thing to do. But he got the travel bug. Now he
Yeah.
wants to travel all over. Um, but that's it's travel is awesome. What do you think the hardest thing or one of the hardest things that you've ever tried to shoot would be?
Hmm. I would say so far the bald eagles in Canada.
Really, what made them hard to shoot?
You got to kind of understand the whole environment there. You're photographing these eagles who are taking advantage of a natural phenomena where there's a massive tidal surge that creates these very dangerous ocean rapids, which is just weird in and of itself. And these ocean rapids at a certain time of year will force fish to the surface from great depths, and the fish basically get the bends or barotrauma. Their air bladders fill with gas, and they get stuck on the surface, and they're going to die, and they can't go back down. And the eagles know this, and they've been doing this for probably longer than humans have been there. Um, the challenging part is like I said, you're in a boat, you're in the middle of these rapids. You have a guy that's navigating you, so you have to put all of your trust in your boat captain that you're going to be safe, so that you can do your thing and try to capture these amazing things that videos and pictures of the eagles. But the eagles also at times come in at 50 miles an hour, and
Mhm.
at times there are as many as 300 of them around you in this huge epic feeding frenzy. So singling them out is very challenging, and then getting the ones that are coming in so fast is very challenging. And then you're dealing, like I said, with the elements of the water, and the boat shifting under your feet also makes it challenging. But it's also, I would say, one of the most rewarding, because it's such a spectacle to be put into the middle of. The only way I can ever describe it to people is if you've ever been to the beach and somebody throws like some food into the air and it rains gulls. It's like that, but it's eagles, and
Wow.
these eagles they're big, and when they come very very close, you don't realize how big they are. Some of them have 8 foot wingspans, and the sounds of them flying right beside you literally sounds like a jet ripping through the air, just as they come by. It's amazing. It really, really is, and it's overwhelming.
Yeah,
But
I would
it's
imagine so
fun.
with that many. I can't imagine 300 bald eagles around, and they're
Yeah,
swooping in and out like that because, like, we hear that with frigate birds and stuff offshore. I mean, they come in, like, especially when they come in behind you, and it's like all of a
yeah,
sudden, you just hear this incredible sound. It's like it's almost like a jet coming in, just like you
yeah,
said. It's crazy.
yeah, yeah,
When
exactly.
you've never heard that before, it takes you off guard, but 300 of those things around you has to be
Mhm.
that's amazing. So, but you say that's like that's the most challenging thing or one of the harder things, that's the first thing that came to mind. Is it
Mhm.
because of the boat rocking or because there's so many that you're trying to pick the one that's about to dive or like what made that with all of your experience, what made that one of the more challenging things? Like
I
I know
think
you
all of the above, like the boat moving underneath your feet. You learn to have some sea legs. If you've been on a boat a while, it becomes natural. And I've been on boats my whole life, so that part wasn't as challenging. Picking out the birds, which ones to focus on, takes a couple of days to understand their patterns and their behaviors, at least for me, and then I can pick them out pretty quickly. I would say the hardest part is the speed at which they come in at this place. They're very very fast, and when th're very fast and th're very close, it's extremely difficult to keep them in the frame and move at the same
yeah,
pace as them.
that's what I would think.
Um, that's
Tough.
the challenge, yeah, for sure.
But you
Um,
you're able on your videos, I mean, they are dead center. Is that like can you edit that to help out with that, or you is that one dead
Somewhat,
center?
yeah. You can somewhat. So most of the videos you see of mine are also 8 times slow motion, which is hugely helpful for many reasons. But it also, when you play them in slow motion, any kind of exaggerated movement is slowed down, and
Right.
it's easier to view. It also gives you a window into behavior that you can't understand because it happens so quickly. So as a photographer, that was one of the main things I learned about shooting video. Was I was learning so much about my subject. I could tell the subtle little movements that meant they were going to do what they were going to do. And then I also learned my own mistakes. Like if you overpan and it's a 1 second overpan and it's 8 times slow motion, when you watch it back, it's 8 seconds long. So your mistakes are very glaring, and it's easy to see where you're making those mistakes so that you can kind of tighten it up. But as far as fixing it in post, there's only so much you can do uh, to stabilize footage. I mean,
Mhm.
you have to have it somewhat centered, somewhat. And I think the main mistake a lot of people make is they move too quickly. You can't. You have to everything has to be slow and exaggerated. All of your movements, your pannings, all of that. You can't be jumping around really quickly. That makes for not good footage.
So when you really nail it, you obviously know that right away, and you have a video just really take off. What's the
Mm.
biggest video ever for you?
It's a eagle video from that place that I got this past summer. I think it's like 235 million views, I think.
Ah, so why do
Yeah.
you think that one popped like that?
It's easy to see why. um, it was exceptional in the sense of what had happened. So we were in the same place we always are, and a big, strong wind came in later in the day. So the light was really soft, and the strong wind was keeping the eagles more stationary and aloft as opposed to coming down quick. And I saw this one coming right at me, and this big gust of wind pushed him, and he just kind of hovered in front of me. And he literally hovered in front of me, dipped down in front of me, grabbed this fish, and they don't normally submerge themselves, but this guy, like, he went up to here, and just his wings are sticking up like this, and he slowly rises out of the water and flies right at me. And then because of the way that they do their thing there, they often eat on the wing. So as he's flying at me, he lifts that fish up to his mouth and just swallows it whole, eyeballing me the whole time directly into the camera. And I
That's
knew the moment I witnessed all of that, I'm praying that my camera is doing its thing. And I knew the moment that I got that would be the one where that would be a good video, I should say. and
I
and
mean,
it
here
sure
it is.
was.
This is it right here, right? This is the
No,
video.
no. If you're on my Instagram, it should be pinned all the way up at the top. That's a similar one though.
Jake will find it. He'll
Yeah,
find it on
yeah.
the
It
pin.
should be pinned all the way up at the top under. Yeah, there it is. I see it on the left. That's the one. Yeah, that's the one where he just kind of gingerly comes down and submerges
Oh, look at
himself.
that. That's amazing.
Yeah, and then swallows that thing whole as it comes right out at us. And yeah, that was an amazing experience.
Look at that. And what is that fish that is eating?
It's a hake fish, Hake. That's the largest or second largest biomass in that area, and that's the fish that are migrating through that channel that get caught in those upwelling currents. And it's amazing to see the guides there that know this area. They know it well, and they know exactly what velocity the tide needs to be for this to start happening. And so, we'll head out at that time. But there's an island full of eagles, and when you look at it, it looks like you're looking at it like Christmas trees with little white heads
Mhm.
everywhere. There'll be like 500 eagles on this island, and they will see the first fish coming up. The water is pretty clear. You can see, I don't know, about 25 feet down. They will see the fish rising from down there, and they all come off of the island at one time. It's like somebody flicks a switch and suddenly, boom, there it is. Just chaos all around you. And it can last 15 minutes or it can last 4 hours. I've seen both. So it's
That's
unbelievable. It really is.
that's
And then
wild.
sometimes, like, to top it off, sometimes you're in the middle of this and orcas will come by. So it's like, what do we do? Do we look at the orcas or do we look at the eagles? So then you have a decision to make. So it's always entertaining for sure.
That's amazing. That
Yeah.
and this is like you said Canada, but like
Yeah.
British Columbia, Canada, or like where
Yeah.
Canada?
North of Vancouver Island and the
Yeah.
Discovery Islands. At a
Yeah.
little tiny island called Stewart Island. The rapids are pretty well known. It's the Erin Rapids, and they're the second most dangerous rapids, ocean rapids in the world. I don't know what the first is, but I have a good idea that it's one that's right around there that we avoid, called Dent Rapids, because it will create a 50-foot vortex whirlpool every time. That's just there
Wow.
for. Yeah, it's kind of eerie. You can find it on YouTube, like the Dent Rapid Vortex, and you can see some people trying to drive around it in boats. But there's a place there where you can climb up high on a mountain during this time, and you can see straight down into the vortex and see the bottom. It's otherworldly. Like when you see it, you're like, this doesn't look real.
That is
It's
bizarre.
crazy, crazy
I
stuff.
wonder, I
Yeah,
guess this is it right here. I wonder what
yeah.
the bottom structure looks like that is creating that. Like that is such a bizarre thing. I don't even know why you would that guy's got to be pretty confident in his
Oh,
vessel to be that
yeah.
close.
That's
Thing. Look at
that's
that
that's
thing.
crazy. Yeah. There's a story that I was told by the owner of the lodge. that there's a lot of very wealthy and affluent people around there, and one of the guys decided they wanted to see what the structure was like what you're asking. So they got a sub, and they put the sub in at like a, I want to say when the tide wasn't crazy, but I could be getting the story wrong. And they vanished, and everybody thought they were dead, and they popped up like really, really far away, and said that, oh my God, it was the most craziest thing that they had ever experienced. When they got down at depth, there were upwellings and currents that they could not control, and they got shot through this wild ride, and they thought they were going to die.
Mr. Toad's
So
Wild Ride. That's what it would be in Disney World, I guess.
yeah, so they weren't able to document much other than, probably elevated heart rates.
I guess so. I guess so. So, have you ever had an encounter while you're doing any of this traveling where you thought you were near death?
No.
Good. Hopefully not
Thankfully.
ever. Hopefully not
Yeah.
ever. Not yet.
Yeah. No. I mean, I've had some interesting encounters with, alligators in Florida. They can be kind of sneaky. Um, I can't think. I think, yeah, that would be the closest I've had to an altercation, would be with an alligator. At one point I was following a family of sandhill cranes, and I was documenting them. And this is it's a quite an interesting story, but it's long, so I won't tell the whole story. But at one point I broke one of the rules. Like, as a Floridian, one of the things like that I was taught as a young uh, boy was, if you're going to be close to the water line, don't have a low profile. That was like rule number one. Or rule number two. Rule number one was probably just stay out of fresh water if you can avoid it. Rule number two is, if you're going to be down at the water's edge, don't have a low profile. And rule number three was never swim with your dog. Those things would get you in trouble, from my understanding. So I broke one of those rules on this day. I had a low profile. I was laying down with a body of water behind me, and I was photographing a sandhill crane with its baby in front of me, so I could get this low angle. And I knew them well enough. It was the female and the chick, and the male came in, and he like was acting really strange. He landed in front of me and was acting very aggressive, like coming at me, throwing his wings out, making all kinds of noise. And I'd never seen him do this before. They were always very friendly to me, and they kind of knew me and I knew them. And then I kind of got the idea that he was trying to tell me something. And I turned around, and there was about a 14-foot gator, about a foot from my foot, coming up on the bank.
Oh,
And the sandhill crane was trying to tell me, hey, the gator is gonna trying to get you. So I just did what the bird did. I stood up and kind of went, "Rah!" and yelled, and the gator went on its way. But I think, had the bird not come in there, I think the gator was coming up to take a bite out of me or drag me back into the water. It was a big gator.
wow. Or at least test you out and see what you were. Right?
That's
Like,
right. It was,
that's how they do it. They bite.
yeah.
When you're when
It's,
you're when you go someplace and you're doing your thing, are you shooting both still and video? Do you have two setups there? Or are you shooting
yeah.
all video? Like, how do you do it? You have two cameras that you're
Yeah, I
shooting?
take two camera bodies with me, and usually a bag full of lenses, and then one will be my dedicated stills camera, and then the other will be like dedicated for video. And
Mm,
then that's one of the questions I get asked a lot is, how do you choose between the two?
yeah.
And there's no rhyme or reason. I just do it. Like, okay, I'm just going to shoot video now for a little while. And you have to, as a photographer, you have to understand that whatever choice you make is the right choice regardless. So like you can't say, oh, I should have been shooting video when you were shooting stills, or vice versa. You just have to
Right.
accept your choice and just go with
And
it. And I've
probably
always found that it works out. So,
half the time you might be thinking, ah, dang it. That should be shooting. You don't want to second guess yourself because you drive yourself crazy. But I'm sure there's still times where you feel like maybe I might have picked up the wrong one. But with what you do, is there, I mean, and I know we're getting better and better at this, and we'll pull like screen grabs from video sometimes, but it seems like that would be like not what you would want to do because you're taking such a high resolution photograph and you're so good at it, and you're doing it with such purpose with the triangle like you told us.
mhm.
But is there an opportunity? Are we getting good enough to where you can get one of these images like you're like you're putting on the like you're showing your prints?
Yeah, yeah.
Is it possible that you could pull something of that quality from video these days?
It's getting close. I think you can do it if you have exceptional video, but the big difference is the amount of data that would be in the screen grab versus like the high res raw file from the still, like
Hmm.
to do some kind of post processing. Like most photographers shoot in, when they're shooting stills, they shoot in a format called raw, which
Right.
is kind of a outputs kind of a flat file without a lot of contrast or color. And it's up to you to kind of shape it back to your artistic vision, whatever that is. And you would be lacking that ability with a screen grab. You don't have the all of the information in there to for lack of a better term, manipulate. So
So when you're like where we are today, like with the photographers that I spend the most time with, they're also really good editors of their own
mm.
photos, and that like you're saying, that's part of the. How much of that do you think is part of your creative process, like your editing, your shooting? Like, where does it, is it 50-50? Is it one is more important than the other to you?
To me, I spend as little time editing as possible because I want to be out in the world capturing stuff. That's
I
just me. Uh,
yeah.
but there is a style, and it depends. It depends on the image or the video. There are some images where I'll spend a lot of time on them and try to make them look, however I have in my mind, and same with video. There's a lot that you can do with video to kind of draw the attention of the viewer into the video. So,
Mm,
but ultimately, I would rather be outside, experiencing this stuff as opposed to editing it on a computer.
yeah, I can see why. What about that black skimmer? That
Yeah,
bird, that was, where does that bird live?
I'm in Florida.
Really?
They come here in the winter. Yeah, it can be difficult to get them feeding or skimming. You have to find them at in a regular pattern and hope that that pattern holds when you get out there. But actually, right now is the season. There's a lot of them here, and of course, they have to eat. So you just have to be able to find their food source, and then they usually won't be too far behind. I uh, I had an older friend who's a photographer tell me something a long time ago that is rung so true. For every animal that you're trying to photograph or video, they want three things. And if you can find those three things relative to that animal, you'll always find that animal. They want food, they want water, and they want a place where they feel comfortable. And it's the same for us as human beings. Those are the three things that would put us in one place. So if you're looking for skimmers, you want to be able to find the skimmer, you want to be able to find their food, you want to find a place where they're comfortable and they don't feel like they're threatened by anything. And then of course a water source, and then you'll find them. So same with any other animal.
And what's this? What is the skimmer's main source of when it's feeding? Like what we're looking right there. What is it feeding on?
All kinds of different fish. It depends on where it's feeding. This was at Merritt Island, Black Point Drive, which
Mhm.
is out in like the Titusville area, some NASA property. So exactly what it would have been pulling out of there, I don't know because it's brackish water. So
Right.
whatever little kind of fish like mud minnows it would get, it would be my guess. I've seen them with mullet. I've seen them here recently. I got some that were pulling pompano and permit out of the surf, which was crazy
Really?
to see. Yeah.
Oh yeah.
And then yeah, there's one. I think that's a mullet. Yeah, he got a finger mullet out of the
You
surf.
saw it pull a
Um,
permit out, huh?
yeah, that same bird got a little permit, but he dropped it because it was too big for him to swallow. And a
Wow.
lot of times they will get little teeny glass minnows. I don't know what those are, but they're little teeny minnows. They'll
Yeah.
skim along and grab those.
Well, I
But
tell
that's
you
a
what,
really,
when
really
they,
cool bird.
yeah, it is, and
Yeah.
what a wild way to evolve into that's your hunting method, because when they get one like that one that we just watched, it just cranks their neck down, like,
Oh
and
yeah, yeah,
turns out you could hit something, I guess. They could. It
yeah.
seems like they would, but they don't. I mean, how
Ye-
do they not hit the bottom somewhere? Or I don't know. I mean,
I
what
don't. I don't
a wild
either.
way
I-
that's the most efficient way that that thing can catch a fish. I mean, it's beautiful. It's amazing,
yeah.
but but,
It seems.
it seems wild that that's how you would do it. I mean, watch this.
Yeah,
When this thing gets one, it, like,
yeah.
just cranks its neck back.
Yeah, I don't know if this one does. I think this was just a beautiful sunrise and
Yeah,
just
That one's awesome.
effortlessly gliding through it. Yeah. There's a cool story I have about these birds, and you can't see it in any of these videos, but I have a photo somewhere. So that bottom beak that they're dragging through the water has like grooves in it that go this way diagonally, so that allows the water to pass by the beak really quickly. So it's more hydrodynamic. And I had a really good photo of that. And there was a surfboard company in California about 5 years ago asked me to send them high res photos of that beak. They wanted to use that same design on their fins, so I gladly sent them that because I thought that would be a great idea. And they wrote me back like 3 months later and said that they were the fastest, most agile fins they had ever designed, and they thanked me greatly. And I think they were a huge success. Yeah,
That's,
there you can see the grooves in the bottom of the beak there. Yeah,
well, I mean, if you're ever looking for inspiration for engineering, or I mean, look to nature.
that's
Probably the
right.
best place to go. I mean, how are you going to get better than that? That is
That's
uh,
right.
that is wild. Look how big that one, that the bottom beak is compared to the
And
top.
it's funny too is it's paper thin. It
Really,
is literally paper thin. Yeah. Yeah.
really.
I would imagine too, like knowing what I know about most birds, that it's probably like a highway of nerve cells, and they can feel the slightest vibrations and fluctuations in the water around them.
You
I
would imagine, because it's
guarantee that.
not like they're piercing the fish. They have to
Grab it.
grab it, and it has. I
Yeah,
mean,
just peep.
yeah, I know you've tried to grab a fish out of the live well. It's not easy.
It's not easy at all.
I mean, even if the thing's dying, it's almost dead. It's hard to grab the thing out of there, but we don't have the right tools.
That's
Um,
right.
that bird does that. The tools are perfect.
Yes.
Cool. So, with everything that you got going on, where do you want to take this? Like, do you have kind of a place on the horizon that you're trying to go with your social media, your photography, or are you just taking it one day at a time?
I just take it one day at a time. I think the greatest thing that I've learned about most of the social media is exposing people to things that they can't see, and how appreciative they are of learning about the world around them through this, and inspiring them to go outside and try to see these things on their own. That's been the greatest part, especially when it's like kids. I've had a lot of teachers use my content to teach kids certain lessons in life, and it's always very dramatic to hear that it's been like that positive to people and that much of an influence. Things that I would have never guessed would be a thing. So for me, that's like the best part. So if that can just continue, I'd be good.
And what about the teaching of other people? Like you said that some people can travel with you, and or how do people learn from you? Like, do you have
um,
a school set up, or just trips,
y-
or how do you do it?
yeah, I have a few things. I have some online courses that are more geared towards specific cameras and setting them up and using them. And then I have a lot of photography workshops where I take people out in the field and teach them how to operate their cameras, how to read the behavior of the animals, and how I might approach uh, doing what I do. And that can be a great experience as well, because you can you can kind of give them this information and watch them attempt it, and then maybe give them a little bit more information, and then kind of stand back and watch them like understand and start kind of growing on their own. And that's very cool too. And again, another like byproduct of it is the friendships that I've created with people that I would not have probably ever met otherwise.
Hmm. That's super cool. And so when you take people out, like, are you doing that mostly in Florida, or
I do a lot in Florida. Yeah.
so when you go out for Florida, is there a species? Do you go for pelicans? Like, is there something that you're pretty doggone sure you can find in the right light and in the right kind of area that you can show people? Is there a favorite?
Whew. The favorite would be ospreys, but with any animals, you can never fully predict what they're gonna do.
That's right.
Yeah, ospreys, I would say I understand them quite well, and I usually know what stimulates them into their biggest feeding episodes, but it's not always something that you can plan your time around, and it's usually like some type of weather event, be it a cold front or something moving through. As a fisherman, you probably know that
Yeah.
it kind of stimulates the whole ecosystem, and everything kind of picks up on those cues, the drops in barometric pressure and all that stuff. And the ospreys do as well. So,
you can see it certainly as a fisherman, but a lot of fishermen, you're paying attention to so many different things, and but to forecast what when ospreys are going to be diving, maybe you can as a fisherman. I don't know, but it seems like more of
it's
a
hard.
yeah. I mean, it seems like more of a specialized kind of skill that the tide needs to be like this, and maybe as a fisherman, you've got a fishing spot where every time you go there on this particular condition, the ospreys are diving too.
Yeah.
That's something that's repeatable and forecastable. But I don't know. I would say for the most part, I don't know that I could forecast when an osprey was going to be doing their thing.
So the place that I like to go the most, it's pretty well known as Sebastian Inlet State
Yeah.
Park. That inlet has a lot of fish that move in and out of it. And the things that I've learned that are definite there, if there is no wind, the ospreys will not fly. They
Hmm.
they need the wind there to help them get these bigger fish out of the water. And if you're at slack tide, they also will not fly because the fish are not doing anything typically at slack tide.
Right.
So at this location, you want a good wind, at least 8 to 10 miles an hour, and you want fast moving water. If you have those two things, the odds of seeing them hunt are very, very good.
Yeah. So will they are they always going to hunt into the wind so that they can get the lift out of the water? Or
That's
do
right.
they
Yeah. Yeah.
sometimes will they
The
go
adults
upwind or anything, or is it pretty much you can almost guarantee that it's going to be directly into the wind?
almost guarantee it's going to be directly into the wind. The only time that changes is if it's a young bird that hasn't learned yet, and you
Uh-huh.
can tell pretty quickly what the young birds are. They look a little bit different. They have a different color eye, and their patterns of feathers are different. And then, of course, the diving not into the wind is usually the dead giveaway. And they will always fly out of the water the same way into the wind, unless they have some type of confrontation from the front, which happens a lot. And then they'll come up as quickly as they can, and they'll turn and catch a tailwind and sail out really quickly. And
Hmm.
the biggest confrontation or competition they have here are the brown pelicans. The brown pelicans here have learned that the osprey are good at what they're doing, and it's amazing to watch these pelicans. They will fly to the mouth of the inlet, land, and they'll just drift with the tide, and they'll wait for an osprey to hit. As soon as the osprey hits the water, the pelican is right on top of them trying to steal their fish. And they're just they're smart. They're doing very little work. But if if that confrontation again is head on, then the osprey will turn and go the other way.
Hmm.
The uh, the other interesting thing that I've noticed is audio wise, ospreys have very specific sounds they make when they're threatened. They have a very specific sound they make when an eagle comes in the area. And if you know that, then you know the eagle's coming. And that's pretty fantastic to see. You can be around 15 or 20 ospreys, they make the alarm call, and you see them all just phew, they're out of there. And I don't know, maybe 20 seconds later, an eagle will come in every time. So they make a very specific call when there's an eagle in the area. And if you as a human being are too close to their food source, they make a very specific sound too. And knowing that can be very helpful, because then you need to just back up and give them their space and let them do what they do. So
Yeah. Interesting that the osprey seems to me to be so much of a more superior fisherman than the eagle, but the eagle is so much of a more dominant bird. Like the osprey
yeah,
doesn't seem to want to they don't seem to want anything to do with the eagle. The eagle will definitely steal from them, and the eagle's just not as good. Like it's just
no,
bigger, and an eagle also is a bird of carrion too in certain areas and certain
that's
things.
right.
Not above that, but I don't think that an osprey is. I've never seen an osprey go down and pick up a dead fish. Like,
I have. They
yeah,
will if times are tough.
yeah, I guess it would have to be really tough because they're such a good fisherman that they typically, whenever I see them flying through the Everglades or whatever, just like what we're seeing there, the fish is like really fresh. Like it looks like it just caught it, and yeah, I think it's so cool how they turn it into the wind. Like,
Oh yeah, aerodynamic. Yeah,
yeah, I mean, head into the wind almost every time.
yeah,
And that goes for, the ospreys that I saw out west when they would catch a trout to,
yep,
the ospreys that you see catch a mullet or something else. And it goes directly right into the wind. It's so
yeah.
cool. I
They're
didn't know.
it's really cool. Something I've learned about them here in maybe the past couple of years. They get a lot of catfish here. The big sail cats, and then the other I don't know what the other ones are called, but the ones that most people throw out away, and they know it's the catfish when they come down because they don't dive at an impact. They come down very gingerly and just pick it off of the top because they don't want to hit those spines of the catfish.
Mhm.
So they know. So I can tell when the bird's coming down, oh, it's going to be a catfish because it's coming nice and slow. And every time that's when they get the big old catfish. So it's interesting. So they know from 50 to 100 feet in the air that what they're about to grab is that catfish with those spines, and they have to avoid it. So they're smart birds.
I've seen a lot of osprey dive just, with my eyes and everything, but until I had seen a lot of your photography and video, I didn't realize, like, in some situations how far out the feet are going in front of the bird. Like, it's an
Yeah,
amazing sight to see that. That's one of the things I like so much about, like, where photography is going, and slow motion video and things like that. You just see these animals, whether it's a fish or a shark or a bird or something, doing these incredible things that with your regular eye and not in slow motion, you can't tell that that's what they're doing. Maybe it could
that's
be a
right.
hummingbird, or, like, now you can see a hummingbird and you see every little beat of the wings, and you're like, that's just not what it looks like when I'm looking at it. But it's
That's
so
right.
cool. Like,
Yeah,
but the
yeah.
osprey, the way that they stick those feet way out in front, not when they're getting a catfish, obviously. Uh, now I know that now, but that's just an incredible bird, the osprey.
it it is some of the slow motion stuff that I've seen too that's very interesting is they will use incoming swells to help them get out of the water. And I've noticed they might unlock one set of talons on the back as the swell's coming up, and they jab it in the back of the fish to make the fish come up on that swell, and they'll
Hmm,
ride that up to get out of the water.
cool.
So yeah, they're good at manipulating the environment to get them out of the water. And another interesting thing I've noticed in slow motion is when they come out of the water and they're finally kind of clear of the water, they immediately scan to the left, to the right, and kind of look up, and they're looking for the clearest way out of there without any kind of confrontation. And you don't see any of that when it, like you said, because it's so fast, boom, boom, and
Yeah.
they're gone. But when you can analyze all that in slow motion, and that's I think one of the most fascinating things about it to me is learning about them and their behaviors.
Yeah. I love it. I love it. And so, the osprey, the eagles, the birds of prey. I'm sure you've photographed frigate birds and everything else. But do you enjoy, like, songbirds, feeder birds, like just general birds as much, or are you kind of a predator kind of photographer?
Well, one thing I've learned about all of these birds doing this is they're all birds of prey, if you ask me. Even the little songbirds are they're catching and eating things that you're like, oh, I didn't realize they rip the heads off of lizards, but
Right.
they're all that way. But I like I would say I definitely like the raptors better. I like owls, eagles, all of the
Wow.
birds of prey. They just fascinate me at what they do, and the peregrine falcon as well. They are unmatched, and they do some bizarre stuff, but they're cool birds too. So
It seems
definitely, I
like
would say I'm drawn more to them.
the owl would be a difficult bird because they're so nocturnal, and they're going to be in the kind of dusky light. But cameras are getting so much better that you can probably do that, and you know how to do that. But most
Yeah,
photographers would have a hard time with that.
some owls are not nocturnal too. Some of the ones up north hunt during the day. Some of
Really?
the yeah, the great gray owls, and
Mhm.
sometimes the snowy owls will hunt during the day. Florida, I've seen barred owls out in the middle of the day, so I think it just depends on the owl. And then we have the little burrowing owls; they're out all the time during the day.
Mhm.
And then we have the screech owls here too, which I wouldn't say are out active during the day, but if you know where to find them, you can find them during the day. So
That's cool. That great gray owl is such a giant bird too.
oh
Um,
yeah.
we used to see those out west, and we'd see them in the day. But we used
Yep.
to have a place that I would fish right under the Tetons. You would like this place, but there was a fishing owl that would come and fish like an osprey, like dive down and get
Oh,
fish, and right in front of the Tetons. It's an
oh
incredible
wow.
Spring Creek down there, and you can go and fish right in this one little place. It's a public area, and you can go down there. But the problem is you're going down there and it's willows everywhere, and the moose are down there. They used to be down there a lot before there were so many wolves around, but I think that they've changed their behavior a lot. But there was a fishing owl, and if you would go there and you would stay towards sunset, you would see it almost every night. And I don't know if the thing's still there doing that, but that was my first encounter with a with a fishing owl. But it couldn't have been in a more incredible setting. It was
Oh,
just
that sounds amazing.
yeah. Well, listen, man, I really appreciate you coming on the podcast. I learned a ton about a lot of different things. But if people want to take your courses, if they want to have you be their personal photography coach, how do they do that? How do they go on a trip with you?
You can find it on all of my social medias or my website, photoworkshopsandtours.com.
Okay. Awesome, man. That would be
Yeah.
a lifetime thing for so many people that are into photography. It would be amazing. It's
Yeah.
really cool that you do that for people
Yeah.
to be able to learn from you like that. That's awesome.
I
Well,
had a great time doing it.
I'll be following your stuff, and it's Mark Smith Photography on Instagram. Is that the same on YouTube? Is that your handle on YouTube?
Yep. That's the same and be that on all of the social medias.
Okay, cool. Well, man, I really appreciate you coming by, and I'll be following your stuff. I hope you
Yeah, I
keep
appreciate it.
putting it out there.
Yeah, I will. Thank you for having me.
You're welcome. All right, that's it for this week. We'll be back with another great guest, just like Mark, and go follow him if you're not already following him. But judging by the number of people following his accounts, I think you probably already are. Anyway, here we go. We'll be back next week.